Hey everybody, Jorge Pelayo. One of the things that's helped me make the most amount of money in the insurance industry is time management. And I remember listening to this video from Darren Hardy, and he says successful people are more successful because they do higher paying activities throughout their day. And then he gave a formula. He said, you look at a normal person, they work 40 hours a week. And I know as entrepreneurs, we often work more, but 40 hours a week times 50 weeks a year. Let's say there's 2 weeks here for vacations. Again, some people take more, some people take less, but 50 weeks. 40 times 50 is 2,000 hours. He says, so whatever you want to make per year, you divide your annual salary, your annual income goal, right? Your annual profit goal by 2,000. And that's what you need to generate per hour. So for example, if you want to make $100,000 per year, you have to make 100,000 divided by 2,000. You have to make $50 per hour. If you want to make $250,000, $125 an hour. If you want to make $500,000, $250 an hour. If you want to make $1 million, $500 an hour. So then he goes on to say, is that activity that you're doing in that very moment, is that something that you would pay someone that amount of money to do? For example, if you're checking your email and you want to make $1 million a year, would you pay somebody $500 an hour to check email? If you want to make $250,000 a year, would you pay somebody $125 an hour to check your email? He says, if you wouldn't pay somebody that amount of money to do that activity, and you really do want to earn that income, then you shouldn't be doing that activity. So I sit there and I grab a yellow pad and I say, I'm going to document everything I do throughout this entire week. And I'm going to do it in increments of at least once an hour. I'm going to go back and document that 1 hour, because if you're documenting every minute, it may be difficult. So, hey, I'm making calls. I'm logging when I'm making calls, 2 hours of calls. I ended up making 53 calls. Boom, 2 hours, 53 calls. Then I'd, go eat something. I track lunch X. And then somebody would come up and talk to me, and it would be, 15 minutes. And then somebody would ask me for help with something, and that would take another hour. And then I'd go run an appointment, and that take, an hour and a half. And so I tracked this whole week. And then I go back and I look at, and I highly recommend you to do this. It's very eye-opening for you if you're willing to look at your truth on where you're spending time. And if that's aligned with what you want, then great. But if you want something and you're not getting what you want and you're spending time doing something else, it's taking you away from the things that you want. So either we have to stop doing those things, right? Or we have to understand that we're not going to get the outcome that we want. So this time management system, right, of looking at your time in terms of money, I started realizing that, hey, you know what? I'd love to make $1 million. And at that point, I don't even think I was making $100,000 an hour, a year. I'm sorry. I would love to make $100,000 an hour, but a year. And so I'm looking at it and I said, okay, if I want to make $100,000 an hour, every single half hour, right? Every single hour, 100,000 divided by 2, $50 an hour. Every single hour is $50, which means every half hour is $25, which means every 15 minutes is half of that, right? $12.50. So somebody would come up and have a conversation with me, and I would log it, right? And I'd say, man, 30 minutes, that conversation cost me $25 right there. Why did I just pay them $25? And I realized that I was doing something. I was paying people with the income I didn't make with my time. So I was paying people to have these conversations. I was taking money away from what I wanted to earn to pay other people to have these conversations. So that changed the way that I really looked at managing my day-to-day time. And every minute when you really look at it, right? Because if you want to make, $500 an hour, right? Every minute's extremely valuable to you. And a lot of times we don't look at it this way. And I know that there's an extreme to this too, because then you're just like, hey, what is it? 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 And you really can't be present. I would rather be more conscious of that and more urgent to be productive and be doing activities to get me closer to my goal. I'd rather be that person and have to pull it back than be the person that's not even aware of that. They're not even present of time. And And that's really challenging, because unless you really, really want something with your heart, your mind, your soul, like it requires you to be on all the time. It requires you to really be analyzing life and have a goal that really is that strong that pulls you towards it. Retiring my mom was that. Buying our dream home was that. Buying my parents' house was that. So those goals for me, traveling the world, being free, that was worthy of my awareness. And so I highly recommend that. So let me give you another piece of time management. When you're looking at time management, this was a great, I think it was the Eisenhower Method. I could be wrong on that, on time management, but he says there's 4 categories. You have important, not important, and you have urgent, not urgent. And I know we've talked about this on a prior video. And he says, if you want to be successful, or time management theory says, if you want to be successful, you should spend the most amount of your time in urgent, right? In urgent and important issues, which those are the things that make you the most amount of money or get you the best return or require your skill set to be able to accomplish those. Urgent and important, right? So in our business, we call that prospecting, calling, running appointments, PCA, or calls, appointments, prospecting, CAP. You're generating activity, and nobody's going to go do that part for you, okay? And then from there, you have important but not urgent. So in that, it's something that's really important. It's family time. It's working out, right? There's things that you need to do that are important, but they're not urgent. It's not like life. Right now, I have to work out this very second, but I should be working out today, this week. And so those things, you schedule those things. You put them on your schedule, and you find what time works for you. Then from there, you have urgent, not important, meaning there are things that need to get done right now. Hey, the car has something that came on. We need to take it to a shop right now. I need to get it to the shop right now, right? It's urgent, but it's not necessarily a high-paying activity, something that you need to do. So you delegate those things. Anything that's very urgent but not important, right? If it doesn't require you, you delegate it. If it does, that's a whole other conversation of finding systems and developing other people to be able to help you with those things. But you delegate it. And then the last category is not urgent, not important, right? Those are things that you eliminate from your schedule. And then you have not urgent, not important. Those are things that you just eliminate from your schedule. There are a lot of things that we want to do because we enjoy doing them. And you have to decide, what do I want now versus what do I want more? And if what you want now is more important than what you want more, then you're constantly going to, having to be struggling to some degree because you're reacting to, your feelings in the moment versus being able to have delayed gratification to be able to have those things later and maybe at a completely different scale. So these time management activities helped. And then Brian Tracy came and he talked about that it's real simple. Find an A activity and a B activity and then just divide them into those 2 categories. So I'm trying to give you different ways of looking at the concept of time management, which is really like, where am I selecting to put my time? And he says, if it gets you closer to your goal, it's an A activity. If it doesn't get you closer to your goal today, it's a B activity. He says, spend more time in the A activities, and he says, get those things done first part of your day. So I said, okay, that's great advice. I'm going to go get my prospects, make my calls, and do the hardest part of my day in the front end of it, right? Some people, will call that, eating the elephant, right? Whatever you want to call it, but it's doing the hard work first in the day. Sometimes we know there's things that we need to do that are a little bit more difficult, and we kind of delay doing them, and then the day gets away from us, and then you're like, I'll do it tomorrow. But again, right, we have habits, so we may end up putting something in front of that activity again if we're not clear on what really matters most. So that was a different perspective. And I remember having this conversation with a young lady on the team, and she says, I worked so hard this week. And I said, man, you worked so hard this week. and I wanted to tell her, but like your numbers don't show that. But I know that if I tell her that, she's just going to defend it, right? Because when you say something to somebody, they defend it. When you tell somebody something, oftentimes they defend it. But when they say it, they own it. And I said, how could I better get her to assess what she defines as hard work? And I said, okay, why don't we assign a certain amount of activity to a certain amount of time, to an activity. Okay, let's do that. So you met with a client. You met on this appointment, this recruiting interview, this client, this orientation, fast start, etc. How much time did it take? How many hours did that take? Well, it takes around an hour. Okay, fair. I went prospecting. I got numbers. Well, how many numbers would you say that you get in an hour? Well, I talk to one person at least every 10 minutes when I'm out networking, and I get at least 3 numbers. Okay, so 3 numbers per hour. Great. And then how many calls did you do? How long does it take you to make, 25 calls? Or how many calls can you make in an hour? She says 25. I said, okay, yeah, because some are answering, some are not. Perfect. So now we have a certain amount of time per each activity. So let's break down your activity, because she says, I worked so hard this week. And I'm not trying to make her feel bad. I'm trying to get her to understand that maybe where she's putting time isn't the best areas. So she says, I worked all week. Okay, how many appointments did you run? 5. Well, we just said that each appointment was 1 hour. So you worked 5 hours there. I guess you're right. Okay, how many calls did you make this week? I made 100. So you just said you can make 25 calls per hour. So you made 4 hours of calls. You worked 4 hours this week in calls. I guess you're right. Yeah, you're right. Because now she's having to be accountable to her time management system. I said, how many numbers did you get, right? So we're at 9 hours so far. I said, how many numbers did you get? Well, I got 10 numbers. I said, okay, that's roughly 3 hours, right? So you prospected for 3 hours total, roughly. So 9 plus 3, we're at 12 hours. I said, where did the rest of the time go? And then she went on to tell me, well, I was doing this and prepping for training. And I said, hey, those are a lot of important things, but that's busy activity. And even if we assigned a certain amount of time to that, we couldn't come up with the entire time frame, because it was just wasted doing a lot of other little things. And it wasn't that she wasn't working. I'm sure she was very effective, right? Efficient, but not effective, not doing the A activities. So this is when people tell me I'm busy, I'll say you have 168 hours in a week, right? 24 hours a day times 7 days a week. Let's say that you sleep 7 hours, okay? And depending on who you talk to, some people, hey, I sleep 4, I sleep 5, I could do great on 5. Some are, I need 7. I'm just I want to be fair to everybody here, conservative. Let's say you sleep 7 hours, right? 7 times 7 is 49, right? So you have 119 hours left. Okay, let's say that you work a job, right? And you work 40 hours, right? You have roughly 80 hours left, ballpark, okay? So if you sleep and you have a full-time job, right? 7 hours, right? 50 hours, let's call it 49, let's call it 50. And let's say you work another 40, right? That is 50 and 40 is 90. You have 78 hours left, okay? You have roughly 80 hours left. And I started realizing that, man, there's so much more time. Well, I got to do this with my family. That's great. You should. I got to pick up my kids, or I got to do this, or we got to have dinner. How much time would you say you spend in families and, chores and all that stuff? Man, at least, 2 hours a day. Okay, that's another 14 hours. 3 hours a day. Great. That's another 20 hours, 21 hours. So now you got 60 hours left. Okay, well, I work out. Well, how many hours do you work out? Well, at least an hour. How many days a week? 5. Okay, so you got 55 hours left. And when you do this exercise, you should do it for yourself. I'm not trying to point you towards a specific response or feeling. What I'm trying to get you to accomplish is to analyze where you're spending your time and see if it lines up with your priorities and your goals, and see if you are investing the time into the areas that matter the most. And so that was a big thing for us. And then the last thing I'll tell you on time management is 80% rule. The 80% rule says that if somebody can do it as good as you can, or at least 80% of that capacity, right? And then time will take that other part, that other development, the training, coaching, time, etc. If somebody can do it 80% as good as you can, that may or may not be an area that you need to delegate. I am trying to create a life where I accomplish all the things that are the most important to me, which is family, faith, health, raising my children, being successful, providing financially, being a leader to our guys, being a leader to the company. And I'm trying to maximize this life because I know one day I'm going to look back and the 106-year-old, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but that older man is going to be sitting in a hospital bed or whatever bed at home, be laying down at home maybe, who knows. I hope I get there. I'm sure we all do. And I'm going to ask myself, man, did you max this out? Did you spend time in the areas that mattered the most to you? And did you max out the opportunity that God gave you? And I want to be able to answer those questions both with yes. And so if we don't inspect this area of our life, we may end up not maximizing the things that are the most important to us and managing our time the most effective. So I hope this helped you to analyze your time in a different way. And if it did, please subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you on the next video, everybody. Take care.